And my next guest is Nick Papanicolaou. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
That was very good. Yeah,
okay.
Papanicolaou.
Who is the VP of Brand and Business Development for New Brand Ventures at Pernod Ricard. Did I get all that correct?
You did. It's a long title.
How about
Nick Papanicolaou, VP, Business Development, New Brand Ventures, Pernod Ricard USA. Yeah, that's
right. I'm just happy I got your last name close enough.
it was good. It was
so Pernod Ricard, most people know or not. I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but for folks who are not, what is Pernod Ricard and what is the New Brand Ventures unit?
Sure. So Pernod Ricard is a second largest wine and spirit supplier in the world. So I work for Pernod Ricard USA, which is an affiliate of Pernod Ricard, the global entity. And within Pernod Ricard USA, we established about 3 years ago a group called New Brand Ventures. And New Brand Ventures is a bit of a hybrid between an internal incubator. So we take some of our own brands that were small, but we believed had potential and had just never been given the TLC, the love and care and capital to really scale. And we focus on incubating those. That's one component. And then the other component is we actually invest in entrepreneurial external ventures, either in a minority or majority type of partnership. And same idea, we try to really work closely with a founder to figure out how can we unlock more value for them, what resources can we provide that'll benefit them, and how do we have a shared vision of growth for the company together.
So I guess the obvious question is, Pernod Ricard, as you mentioned, wine and spirits company,
Yep.
BevNET and BevNET Live primarily focused on non-alcoholic beverages. What's your interest in coming here?
No, I think my interest in coming here is understanding what the trends are in the non-alc space. And by the way, as you know, the lines between alc and non-alc are getting more and more blurred. We're seeing strategic players in the alcohol industry enter the non-alc and vice versa. Coca-Cola and some others in non-alc entering alc. So first of all, I think there's kind of a blending of those different areas. But secondly, and equally important, if not more important, is actually going out and finding what are the trends that are happening in other industries, food and beverage, non-alc beverage, that might actually kind of carry over into the alcohol beverage industry. So we see that a lot. I think alcohol beverage probably lags a little bit, the non-alc sector. So I think it's always kind of a leading indicator to see what's coming in our industry as well.
Well, it was interesting if you watched our New Beverage Showdown. A few of the finalists today were talking about marketing their products as an alcoholic alternative, as an alternative to alcoholic beverages. Can with their CBD and THC infused product, Proposition Cocktail Company creating a non-alcoholic cocktail product. I mean, are those some of the brands that you're looking at and as an opportunity to include into your portfolio?
Yeah, we are. Look, admittedly, I think one thing I like a lot about our company is we know our strengths, but we're also very aware of our weaknesses. So on the trend front, I think we absolutely buy in that this is happening and it's only going to grow. But I think the other aspect of it is, are we actually best suited to sell a non-alc brand or an alternative to the consumption occasion of where spirits traditionally has played? And we're not sure of the answer. We know we're not experts at that. We haven't done it in the past. We think we can do it, but we're not quite sure what that looks like yet. So if you think about our route to market, our sales and distribution force, they are experts and have been doing it for years in selling spirits and now more small emerging craft spirits, that have come onto the scene recently. We're not sure that is necessarily best suited to sell non-alc products. So it's something we're looking at closely and we know we can get better at. But right now we've actually held off on those investments and we're just kind of heavily monitoring it.
As you mentioned, there are other alcoholic beverage companies getting into the non-alc space, some of them quite aggressively. Does that concern you at all?
I don't know if it concerns us. I think yes, to an extent, obviously, everything, we got to be looking at all kinds of trends and where competition can come from. I think it concerns us in the sense that we know this is going to each share, from our pocket in a way, but vice versa. We're all looking to go that direction as well. So it comes back to the idea of the two different industries are blending or converging more and more. So it's something we know we have to play in. So it concerns us to that extent, but we're looking at kind of alternative ways to get involved in the space without necessarily doing it directly at first. So it's almost like a test and learn approach, like what can we do with external partners, for instance, financial institutions where we could get involved in the non-alc space and kind of learn from that a bit, slowly start to add resources, and then at a certain point in time say, now we feel confident enough that we can add enough value to bring it in-house.
Perhaps the hottest ingredient in many a year in food and beverage, cannabis, CBD.
Yeah.
Again, competing companies to Pernod Ricard. Some have gotten aggressively into that space. What's your take on cannabis? What's your take on CBD on its own, and then as an added ingredient in beverage?
Yeah. So first of all, I should preface this by saying I am not a cannabis expert by any means. We do look at the space. I would say overall, I think CBD is a little less interesting to us because I think it's really a functional ingredient. And to me, that probably means it goes the way of kind of any commodity, and all the large corporates will have their own CBD water, CBD this, CBD that. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily an area we want to play in. I think the THC component is a little more interesting, but right now, going up to the top from Paris, our headquarters in Paris, including Alex Ricard, who's CEO of our company, I think the hesitation has been, we're not entirely sure how this is going to play out. There's a little risk aversion to it, and let's stay on the sidelines and kind of actively monitor it and then see when the right time to get into it is. Obviously, we know Constellation and Canopy Growth and some of the others are getting into the space, but right now we're a little bit more on the sidelines with that.
Well, let's talk about your wheelhouse then. I mean, in terms of the portfolio
you're probably going, all right, so you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. What do you want to do?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see how you're evaluating all these opportunities, and there are many of them out there, but you've got to take a patient approach because there's so much unknown. There's so many unknowns in all this, especially if it's not your core competency. But in terms of your the portfolio for NBV, New Brand Ventures, what are some of those brands? Then, how are you evaluating those opportunities to invest in brands in the spirits and wine space?
Yeah. So let me take a step back, if you don't mind, and just say, so first of all, when we look at growth in our industry in spirits, about 25 to 30% of it comes from new-to-world innovation, new brands at launch, not line extensions. They can be in existing categories or new categories. So if you think of our industry, let's say it grows at 4% a year, 1% of that is coming from new-to-world innovation. So we know it's an area that we have to play in and we want to play in. There's also the intangible aspect of, as we work with more entrepreneurs, we're kind of gaining learnings from them. We're learning how to be more agile and nimble and a little more disruptive and creative, but also adding value, hopefully, to those partnerships. So then when you look at craft spirits to me is really interesting. And by the way, I think the word craft is kind of overused. I kind of, shudder a little bit when
It's a weird descriptor for spirits. I think it kind of just got jammed in there because of beer.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I know a lot of distillers that just don't use it. They still call it small batch distilling or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's right. And from a brand front, we almost prefer to call it emerging brand because, right, you're small, you're growing, but whether you're craft or not is a debate we don't want to get into. I mean, we've got so many big brands in our portfolio that technically are also craft and have been made the same way, handmade with a single pot still for century. But I think the end consumer sometimes, I don't want to, maybe confuses a bit, or the word craft to them means local, independent, small entrepreneur. So to us, it's a little bit of a gray area, but let's just call it emerging brands or the craft space in general. If you look at that and you make an analogy to beer, for instance, craft beer to us has been on a 30 to 40 year kind of super cycle and still growing, although softening. Craft spirits is like 10 to maybe 15 years at most into arguably a pretty similar super cycle. So we're definitely less than halfway there, probably a third of the way there. So we see a lot of room for growth and a lot of potential there. So I think for us, we're very excited about craft spirits as a whole. And then, of course, the way we look at brands, we're looking at what industries or what categories are they in? Are they large markets? Are they growing markets? Or is there some catalyst for us to believe that it will ignite future growth? Mezcal is a good example of that. 5 years ago, nobody was talking about mezcal, and we started looking in 2015. So 4 years ago, and our belief was, there was a lot of analogies to actually whiskey and how people were consuming mezcal. We saw the trade, the bartender community getting heavily behind it. So a lot of kind of, bottoms up and top down fundamentals that we were looking at that made it interesting to us, and that's one we invested in with a brand called Del Maguey that we're super happy about. But in general, we're kind of looking at, as I said, the categories that are large, growing, or we believe there's a catalyst to grow. And then, of course, as a strategic, we have to make sure that there's a fit in terms of our portfolio. both as a large company, Pernod Ricard, but also within the New Brand Ventures portfolio, which is a little bit more of a smaller incubator, as mentioned. So.
Yeah. Well, Nick, when I saw your name on the attendee list, I said, I got to talk to this guy because I really am interested in what you guys are doing. We are out of time, but I'd hope to connect with you again really soon to talk more about what the New Brand Ventures unit is doing. And thank you very much for being a listener.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm a big listener of Taste Radio, so I heard you a bunch of times, so it's great to actually finally meet in person and hope to be back.
Definitely. Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Nick.
Ray. Take care.